Mason Crawford called me into his office at 4:47 on a Friday afternoon, which was exactly how I knew what was coming. Nobody schedules good news conversations at 4:47 on a Friday. I'm Michael Harrison, 47 years old, and I'd been working at Quantum Dynamics for exactly 9 years and 364 days. Tomorrow was my 10-year vesting cliff, $2.8 million in equity that would become mine at midnight tonight. I'd been counting down to March 9th like a kid waiting for Christmas, except this Christmas was going to pay for my kids' college tuition and maybe let me sleep at night without worrying about money. Lisa and I had been talking about it over dinner just 3 nights ago. "One more day," she'd said, cutting into her chicken while Hannah complained about her calculus homework at the kitchen table. "Then we can finally breathe." Ryan had looked up from his phone long enough to ask if we could afford to fix the Honda's transmission after all these years of grinding gears. "After Saturday," I'd told him. "After Saturday, we can fix a lot of things." Mason's office smelled like that corporate air freshener they pump through the vents, mixed with the particular anxiety that fluorescent lights seem to breed. His desk was suspiciously clean. No papers, no coffee rings, just a single manila folder with my name typed on the tab. Through his window I could see the parking lot already half empty, people escaping into their weekends. "Michael, thanks for coming in," he said, not meeting my eyes. Mason was 35, maybe 36, one of those MBA types who'd been brought in 6 months ago to optimize operations. He had the kind of confidence that comes from never having served anywhere except boardrooms. "I'll get right to it. We're making some organizational changes. Your position is being eliminated. Effective end of business today." The chair beneath me was one of those mesh corporate things that's supposed to be ergonomic but just makes you sweat. I could feel it pressing into my lower back as the words sank in. Tomorrow was Saturday, March 9th, my 10-year cliff, the date I'd been watching on my calendar for a decade, circled in red pen because I didn't trust digital for something this important. "Interesting timing," I said. My voice came out level, which surprised me because my heart was doing something violent against my ribs. 20 years in the Navy teaches you to keep your voice steady when things go sideways. But this felt different. This felt personal. Mason shifted in his executive chair. "These decisions are never about timing, Michael. It's purely operational. We're restructuring the entire engineering division. Your role has become redundant with our new efficiency initiatives." Efficiency initiatives, that's what they called it when a 35-year-old MBA decided that experience was expensive and loyalty was a liability. I'd led the integration of our authentication systems after the TechBridge acquisition. I'd personally rebuilt their entire framework, working 70-hour weeks for 4 months while Mason was probably still figuring out where the men's room was. Patent number 8,973 and 421 was mine. The one covering our distributed authentication system that processed 40 million transactions daily. My base salary was $155,000, which wasn't cheap. But I'd earned every dollar over 10 years of building systems that kept this place running. But I didn't say that. Navy training again. Sometimes you keep your mouth shut and assess the battlefield. I just nodded. "I understand. I'll need to review my separation agreement. Of course. HR will send everything over." He stood up, which meant I was supposed to leave. "We appreciate your contributions to Quantum Dynamics over the years. Really, we do." I walked back to my desk through corridors I'd walked for nearly a decade, past cubicles where my teammates were packing up for the weekend, blissfully unaware that one of them had just been executed. My hands weren't shaking yet, but they would be. Carol Thompson from HR was already at my desk with a cardboard box and that sympathetic expression HR people must practice in mirrors. She watched me pack like I might steal something, which was almost funny considering I'd spent 10 years building half the systems that kept this place running. My phone buzzed as I was wrapping my Navy coffee mug in tissue paper, the one Ryan had bought me for Father's Day when he was 12 with "World's Best Dad" in fading letters. A text from Nicole Parker, my lawyer. "Saturday is coming." Nicole had been my attorney for 8 years, ever since I'd gotten smart enough to stop trusting companies to look out for my interests. When I'd signed my employment contract with Quantum Dynamics 10 years ago, fresh off my Navy discharge and naive enough to almost sign their standard agreement, Nicole had spent 3 hours going through every clause with a red pen. Lisa had been pregnant with Hannah then, and we were living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make Ryan's daycare payments and wondering if we'd bitten off more than we could chew with the mortgage. Nicole had changed 47 different sections before she'd let me sign. I'd paid her $3,000 for that review, which felt extravagant when we were counting every dollar. One of those changes had been in Section 7, subsection C, the equity vesting schedule. The standard language said equity vested at the end of business day on the anniversary. Nicole had crossed out business day and written calendar day in her careful handwriting. In the margin she'd noted, vesting occurs at 0001 on anniversary date, regardless of business hours or employment status. Their lawyer had initialed it. Probably didn't even read it. People don't read contract revisions about timing technicalities. They assume everyone's operating in good faith, that nobody's going to try to fire someone exactly one day before a massive vesting event. But Nicole had been a corporate attorney for 15 years before she switched to representing individuals. She knew exactly what companies would try because she'd been on the other side writing these contracts, finding every loophole to protect the company. She knew because she'd taught them how. I carried my box to my Honda, the same one I'd been driving for 7 years because I was waiting for the equity to vest before buying anything nice. The transmission had been grinding for months, but we'd been putting off the $3,000 repair. "Just a few more months," Lisa would say whenever I mentioned it. "We can make it to March." My badge didn't work at the exit gate anymore. They'd already deactivated it. I had to wait for someone else to leave so I could follow through. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept thinking about Hannah's acceptance letter to state. Full tuition, $28,000 a year for 4 years. Ryan was already costing us $32,000 annually at his school, and we'd been taking out loans, making minimum payments, telling ourselves it would all be worth it when the equity vested. Lisa was working double shifts at the hospital just to keep up with the interest payments. The plan had been simple. March 9th comes, we cash out enough to pay off the loans, fix the transmission, maybe even take a vacation somewhere that wasn't a camping trip to the state park. At home, I set the box on the kitchen counter next to Lisa's nursing journals and Hannah's college acceptance letters. The house was quiet. Lisa was pulling another double shift, Ryan was at basketball practice, and Hannah was at her friend's working on some group project. I opened my laptop. The separation agreement was already in my email, sent at 5:03 p.m., exactly 16 minutes after Mason had fired me. Someone had been ready with that document. Someone had prepared it in advance, loaded it up, finger hovering over send. I read through it while drinking coffee from a mug Hannah had made me in her high school pottery class, slightly lopsided, glazed in blue, with Dad written in her careful handwriting. The agreement was 12 pages of dense legal language, standard confidentiality clauses, non-compete provisions that would keep me out of the industry for 18 months, and a severance package of 6 months' salary. Generous by their standards, meant to make me feel grateful enough not to cause problems. Section 9 was what mattered. Employee acknowledges that termination prior to equity vesting date results in forfeiture of all unvested equity grants per the terms of the original employment agreement dated March 8, 2015. They thought they'd timed it perfectly. Fire me Friday evening, I leave without my shares. They save $2.8 million. Probably Mason's idea. He'd been brought in to cut costs and make himself look good to the board. He'd been studying the payroll, identifying high-cost legacy employees, which really meant anyone who'd been there long enough to earn respect and a decent salary. In his first all-hands meeting, he'd talked about efficiency and optimization and doing more with less, which everyone knew meant layoffs were coming. I called Nicole. She picked up on the second ring even though it was almost 6:00 p.m. on a Friday. "They did it," she said. It wasn't a question. 47 minutes before end of business. "Perfect. Don't sign anything. Forward me the separation agreement. And Michael, congratulations. In about 6 hours, you're going to be very wealthy." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt nauseous. I ordered pizza for the kids and sat staring at the kitchen table where we'd had so many conversations about money over the past 2 years. The stack of loan paperwork was still there under Lisa's medical journals, the calculator she'd been using to figure out payment schedules, the spreadsheet she'd made tracking every dollar until March 9th. Lisa got home at 11:30, exhausted from her shift, scrubs rumpled, hair escaping from her ponytail. She found me sitting in the dark kitchen with my laptop open. "How was your day?" she asked, then saw my face. "What happened?" I told her everything. About Mason, about the timing, about the separation agreement. She sat down across from me, still in her scrubs, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "Tomorrow's Saturday," she said finally. I know. Your shares vest at midnight. Nicole says they do. She says the contract language is clear. Lisa reached across the table and took my hand. So what happens now? Now we wait. And we see if 10 years of Nicole's paranoia was worth $3,000. At 11:58 p.m., I opened my equity management portal on my laptop. Lisa was beside me on the couch, still in her scrubs because she'd been too wired to change. The interface was slow, designed by developers who thought users had infinite patience. I refreshed at exactly midnight. The page loaded. My vesting schedule updated. 15,135 shares fully vested as of March 9th, 00 at $185 per share. That was exactly $2,799,975. Close enough to $2.8 million that my hands started shaking. Lisa grabbed my shoulder. Is that real? I took a screenshot, then another. Downloaded the PDF statement and saved it in 3 different places: my laptop, our external hard drive, and the cloud backup I'd set up that afternoon. Then I sent it to Nicole with a timestamp. Her response came back in 43 seconds. Beautiful. Don't contact them. Wait for Monday. Let me handle this. Saturday felt surreal. Lisa and I made pancakes for the kids like it was any other weekend, but every few minutes one of us would check my phone to make sure the equity portal still showed those numbers. Ryan came downstairs around 10, saw us both staring at my laptop screen, and asked what was going on. Your dad got fired yesterday, Lisa said, because she's always been the one to tell our kids the truth straight. But he also might have just secured your college tuition. Hannah appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, calculus book under her arm. Wait, what? Dad got fired? I explained it all while they ate breakfast. The timing, the contract language, the equity that had vested at midnight. Ryan put down his fork halfway through my explanation. So they tried to screw you over, but you outsmarted them? Nicole outsmarted them 10 years ago. I just happened to listen to her. Hannah, always the practical one, asked the question that mattered. Are we going to be okay? I looked at Lisa across the kitchen table, saw her give me the smallest nod. Yeah, sweetheart, we're going to be more than okay. The weekend crawled by. I kept checking the portal every few hours, terrified that some system administrator would notice and reverse it. But the shares stayed there, 15,135 of them, worth $2,799,975 at Friday's closing price of $185. Sunday evening, I got an email from Melissa Davis, Mason's assistant. Please confirm receipt of separation agreement and return signed copy by Kobe Monday, close of business. They were pushing for a fast signature, trying to get me to acknowledge the termination before anyone looked too closely at the timing. Nicole called at 8:42 p.m. They're going to figure it out Monday morning when someone in payroll checks the equity records for terminated employees. When they do, they're going to come at you hard. Are you ready for this? What does hard mean? It means they're going to argue that the intent of the contract was clear, that their interpretation should govern, that no reasonable person would interpret calendar day to mean what we know it means. They're going to say it was a drafting error, that you took advantage of a technicality in bad faith. They might sue to void the equity grant entirely. This is going to get ugly. I was sitting in our living room, watching Lisa grade nursing exams at the dining table while Ryan played video games on his laptop. Normal Sunday night activities that suddenly felt precious. How ugly. $2.8 million ugly. That's not money companies just hand over. They'll spend $1 million in legal fees to avoid paying out. I've seen companies spend $3 million fighting $2 million claims just to make a point. What do? Nothing. You do absolutely nothing. You don't respond to emails, you don't sign anything, you don't take their calls. Tomorrow at 9:00 a.m., I'm sending a letter to their general counsel explaining that you vested at midnight Saturday and expect full access to your equity. We establish our position first, cleanly, in writing. Then we see what they do. Monday morning, I didn't get dressed. Stayed in sweats, made coffee, and watched my inbox like it was about to explode. Lisa kissed me goodbye before her shift, whispered, "Stay strong," in my ear like she used to when I was deploying. At 9:04 a.m., I got my first missed call from Mason, then another at 9:11, a text at 9:17. Need to speak with you urgently regarding separation agreement. At 9:23, my personal email dinged. Nicole's letter to Quantum Dynamics General Counsel. I read it 3 times. It was perfect, clinical, factual, with every relevant contract clause cited. She'd attached the original employment agreement with her handwritten notation highlighted in yellow. She'd included screenshots of the equity portal showing my vested shares as of 001 on March 9th. Her closing paragraph was particularly sharp. Mr. Harrison's equity vested in full at 001 on March 9th, per the unambiguous terms of his employment contract. His subsequent termination 6 hours later does not affect his vested equity rights. We expect Quantum Dynamics to honor its contractual obligations and provide full access to these shares. My phone rang. Mason again. I didn't answer. At 10:37, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from Owen Sterling, Quantum Dynamics General Counsel. His voice was careful, controlled. Mr. Harrison, this is Owen Sterling. I've received correspondence from your attorney regarding your equity vesting. There appears to be some confusion about the interpretation of certain contractual provisions. I'd like to schedule a call to discuss this situation and reach an amicable resolution. Amicable resolution meant please take less money than you're owed. Please don't sue us. Please go away quietly. Nicole called at 11. They're scared. Owen Sterling doesn't personally call employees about equity disputes. That only happens when the company knows they screwed up badly. By Tuesday afternoon, I had 23 missed calls and 14 emails, each one more urgent than the last. The tone was shifting from conciliatory to aggressive. Mason's messages went from, "We need to talk to failure to respond is unacceptable to you, are still bound by company policies regarding equity." At 3:41 p.m., I got an email from Owen with a formal legal demand attached as a PDF. We are prepared to offer Mr. Harrison a settlement of $1.1 million to resolve all equity claims and separation matters. This offer expires in 48 hours. Failure to accept will result in formal legal action to void the equity grant. $1.1 million. Less than half of what I was owed. And they were setting a deadline, trying to create artificial pressure, trying to make me panic and accept before thinking it through. Nicole's response was immediate when I forwarded it. Reject it. Don't even respond. They'll come back with something better. That 48-hour deadline is theater. They're trying to force you into a quick decision because they know their position is weak. But Wednesday morning, something changed everything. At 8:19 a.m., I got a text from Sarah Mitchell, another engineer who'd been at Quantum for 12 years. Did they fire you to avoid your vesting? Same thing happened to Caleb last year, day before his cliff. They gave him half what he was owed and he signed because he couldn't afford to fight. My stomach dropped. I called Nicole immediately. If there's a pattern, she said, and I could hear the shift in her voice, the sharpening, then this isn't a contract interpretation dispute. This is systematic fraud. We need to find out how many people they've done this to. This changes everything. This is potentially a class action. By Thursday, I had names. Caleb Rodriguez, yes, but also Amanda Foster and Lucas Bennett and Catherine Wells. 4 engineers, all fired within 3 days of major vesting events over the past 18 months. All had taken settlement offers, signed NDAs, and walked away with less than they were owed. None had known about the others. Catherine had been owed $2.1 million and accepted $700,000. Lucas had lost $1.4 million, settled for $500,000. Amanda's cliff had been $1.8 million, and they'd given her $650,000, and she'd thought she was lucky to get it. Caleb, the one Sarah had mentioned, had been owed $1.6 million and taken $800,000. They have a playbook, Nicole said when I called with the details. Fire them right before vesting, offer them roughly 40% of what they're owed, use legal intimidation to pressure quick settlements with NDAs. It's brilliant and completely illegal. Nicole filed a demand for arbitration Friday morning, not just for my equity, but for wrongful termination, breach of contract, and breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. The demand included every name we'd found, suggesting a pattern of deliberate timing to deprive employees of vested equity. She'd also sent letters to Caleb, Amanda, Lucas, and Catherine explaining that their NDAs didn't prevent them from cooperating with investigations into illegal conduct, that they might have claims worth pursuing. The response came faster than I expected. Monday afternoon, Owen Sterling sent a new offer, $1.9 million, contingent on signing an NDA and releasing all claims. No admission of wrongdoing, full confidentiality about the settlement terms. "We're getting closer," Nicole said when I called, "but we're not there yet. They're still trying to buy silence. I want the full $2.8 million plus your legal fees, plus 6 months severance, plus benefits continuation. And I want them to revise their equity policies so they can't do this to anyone else. They'll never agree to that. Watch them." But they didn't agree. Instead, on Tuesday morning, Quantum Dynamics filed a lawsuit against me for breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of confidential information, and fraudulent inducement. The complaint was 47 pages long and alleged that I had deliberately manipulated my employment contract with knowledge of the company's standard practices, that I had acted in bad faith throughout my employment with intent to defraud the company, and that I had no legitimate claim to the shares. I read the lawsuit in my living room at 2:13 in the afternoon, feeling something cold spread through my chest. They were calling me a liar and a thief in legal language that would become part of public record. My name was in there 36 times, each instance another accusation. Lisa found me there when she got home from her shift. I showed her the papers, watched her face harden as she read. "They're trying to destroy you," she said. "Nicole says it's intimidation, that they're trying to scare me into settling. Are you scared?" I thought about it. 20 years ago, maybe. Before the Navy, before I'd learned that most threats are just noise. Before I'd learned to trust preparation over panic. No. I'm angry. Nicole was at our door by 6 p.m. with a bottle of wine and a legal pad covered in notes. This is exactly what I expected. Classic corporate litigation strategy. File something aggressive and shocking, try to make you look like the bad guy. But here's what they don't know. When they filed this suit, they opened themselves up to discovery. Every email, every memo, every discussion about you or any other employees becomes available to us. They just made a massive strategic error. Discovery started 3 weeks later. I wasn't allowed to see most of what Nicole's team was receiving, but I could tell from her phone calls that something significant was happening. She kept using words like remarkable and damning and better than I hoped. At 7:41 p.m. on a Thursday evening, Nicole called with news that made my hands shake. "Michael, they kept emails. Everything. Mason sent a message to Owen in January, 2 months before they fired you, saying, quote, Harrison's vesting cliff is coming up in March. Big payout. Can we structure his termination to avoid the equity hit?" Owen replied with advice on timing strategies. They discussed waiting until the last possible day to maximize the chance you wouldn't notice until it was too late. We have the whole thread. 17 emails. They planned this meticulously. They planned it and documented it in writing on company servers. We also found similar email chains about Caleb and Amanda, spreadsheets tracking high-cost legacy employee vesting schedules. This isn't a contract dispute anymore, Michael. This is documented corporate policy to defraud employees of earned compensation. By the next morning, Quantum Dynamics' legal strategy had collapsed. Owen called Nicole at 8:56 a.m. requesting an immediate settlement conference. The lawsuit against me was quietly withdrawn at 9:32, filed as voluntarily dismissed without prejudice, which was lawyer speak, for we realized we made a terrible mistake. At 11:15, I was sitting in a conference room on the 43rd floor, looking across a table at Mason Crawford, Owen Sterling, and 2 other lawyers. The room smelled like expensive wood polish and the kind of desperation that comes from knowing you've lost. Mason looked smaller than I remembered, grayer. His suit was wrinkled. He wouldn't look at me, just kept staring at his hands folded on the table. Owen did all the talking. "Mr. Harrison, we believe there's been a significant misunderstanding about the circumstances of your departure from Quantum Dynamics. We're prepared to offer a comprehensive settlement that acknowledges your equity claims and resolves all outstanding issues." "How comprehensive?" Nicole asked. $2.8 million in equity, fully vested, and immediately transferable. 6 months severance at current salary, full benefits continuation for 12 months, neutral reference for future employment, and mutual release of all claims. "And an NDA," Nicole said. Owen hesitated. "We would prefer confidentiality around the settlement terms." "No," I said. It was the first word I'd spoken in the meeting. "No NDA. I'll release the claims, but I won't sign away my right to talk about what happened. They agreed to everything. The equity transferred that afternoon. $2.8 million. Real. Mine. The equity transferred on a Tuesday afternoon. $2,799 to $975 in my account, real and mine. But the real moment came that evening at dinner, when Lisa looked across the table and said, "You did it. You actually did it." Not we won the money, not we got lucky, you did it. Because she knew what it had taken. The years of watching every dollar, the faith in Nicole's paranoia, the courage to fight when they tried to steal what I'd earned. Mason resigned quietly. Owen took early retirement. The company revised their policies. But those were just footnotes to the real story, which was that sometimes preparation beats power, sometimes persistence wins over politics, and sometimes a guy with a red pen circle on a calendar can change the rules for everyone who comes after. I mentor engineers now, teach them contract negotiation, help them understand that every word matters when your future is on the line. Nicole and I have a little practice. Harrison and Parker contract review. We're not getting rich, but we're keeping people from getting robbed. Hannah starts MIT in the fall. Ryan's got 2 years left at state. The transmission's fixed. The house is paid off. Lisa cut back to part-time because she wants to, not because we need the money. And every March 9th, I remember that Friday afternoon, the manila folder, the 47 minutes that almost changed everything. Some lessons you pay for in advance. Some fights you win 10 years before you know you're fighting them. And sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to accept that's how things work.